Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for attending tonight's exciting panel. I know I'm very excited to be amongst these illustrious guests. We are deeply honored to welcome you to our new gallery here in London's Bond Street. And it's my great pleasure to have two illustrious guests. Mr.
I can count one.
Wait. Two illustrious guests. First, Swiss collector, artist, and designer Rolf Sachs. To my extreme right, one of the best-known auctioneers and art advisor, Simon de Pury. And more importantly, and the internationally acclaimed artist, designer, and architect for whom we are all gathered here, Ron Arad.
And Isabelle.
So we're all here to talk about Ron and his career and his oeuvre. As we know, throughout his career, Ron has been recognized for his ability to merge art, design, and craftsmanship to create unique and thought-provoking pieces. So I'd like to take the first part of this panel to discuss your journey to Dakar that you took, those 3 days that you took in 2019. You once said, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. So I would like to talk about this sentimental journey where your deep appreciation for craftsmanship and materials got you to work with skilled artisans from the Mafrique fabrication studio in Dakar, and where you created these fantastic pieces that we have around us. Here we have America made in Africa. We got the Big Easy chairs. We got the D sofas in the back. Can you tell us, Ron, about the artistic merits that you witnessed in their process, and the engagement with the works and the materials itself, and how did the experience of community play in the creation of these works?
3 days is not enough, of course. It is, it was a project. The reason I went to Dakar is to do this project Mafrique. It was pretty amazing. The next morning, I woke up and we drove to the place where we were, a different place, different colors, different streets, different buses. Everything is sort of amazing colors that, not only they can, take the drawings and bend tubes in a three-dimensional way, they also made the tools to bend it around. And it was amazing. I worked with two teams there. One team, the metal workers, and one of the guys was called Modu, so I called it the Modu Collection. And another team that worked on the balcony of Salam, who hosted the whole thing, that they were the weavers. The metal workers, I can understand more or less what here. See, look, it's amazing. They just made this tool to bend something, and I just did a sketch, and there it was. This is Modu, by the way. But when I saw the people starting the day with the weavers, the people that wove, they were waiting on a balcony like that, almost asleep. And I thought, are these people going to do? And then the day started, and they were all like this guy. Amazing energy, and they knew what to do, and they had tools, and like we sometimes use the ear to hide a pencil here. They had a hook there that they can, and it is, I don't understand. I don't understand how they do it, and they do pretty amazing. Now, it's not only the technique and the artisanship, it's also the aesthetic. It's a very interesting discussion about cultural appropriation, but I was interested in them doing African things. So all the discussions about colors and things, said, yeah, well, we can do it like this, we can do it like that. But in the end, In the same way that when you look at the resin pieces here, I can't take credit for the beauty of the cracks. That, you know, it's there. I mean, like with every piece of, everything is a dialogue between, a compromise between the will of the artist or the designer, the material, the process, and the artisans. The artisans in Dakar were very sort of, their culture was very, very present there. And it was only 3 days, but 3 amazing days. You go out of the studio to the street, and the street is a market, and they sell shoes and tables, and amazing. But that was part of a project that was called Mafrique of Moroso. But while we were doing things like the Big Easy in woven, I talked to Salam and said, why don't we do the same thing that you do with the woven, what you're doing, and do something else. Let's use recycled metal, like oil barrels and things like that. And we did these things, like while we were, this was like deviating from our homework, we just started that. Years later, we did a whole collection it is like this. That is all we forgot about. Look, when I see this picture, it's amazing. I'm very jealous of the color of the floor, the color of the wall, the line drawing of the Big Easy, and then anyway. So it sort of opened the route to something that, in a funny way, it reminded me of the early days when I started to weld and the people around me started to weld, and we were useless.
So does the notion of the creative journey, did it differ in Africa from Western cultures, and did it feel more communal?
Yeah, I mean, there was a community, there were a community, and there's I had to speak my poor French to them, and French is not their main language, but you know, we did get on very well, and we took lots of pictures together. But yes, they are a community, and Salam, that runs the place, I mean, found himself in Udine, in Moroso, and for him it was coming home. Oh yeah, here's one of the pictures. But yes, it's what they did with me, what they do, but they did, the subject matter changed. So, but for me, it wasn't, it was yet another way of doing something, not very different, well, different in content and look than working, carving wood with a CNC machine. It's not less exciting. They're both equally exciting. They're both tools and component or participant in what you do. I mean, like, the journey always starts with a pencil, with a soft pencil that later, I have to confess, changed to a light pen on a tablet.
You mentioned really briefly about the materials. As we know today, there is a growing demand for sustainability, the ethically produced. You obviously made the Dakar series with used old drums, as you said. But did you already have the idea of the potential of this material upon seeing them? Or did the idea of constructing the Big Easy, for example, from these come after some experimentation?
I mean, like, look, I can always claim, yeah, I wanted to save the world, but it's not true. I mean, I want to save the world. My first ever piece of furniture, the rover chair, was put on the cover of the Friends of the Earth magazine. And they gave it as an example of, this is how we should do things, because it was a recycled car seat. And I was very happy that I did something thinking irresponsible. I thought more about Marcel Duchamp and found objects, and Picasso's bicycle seat with a handlebar and things like that. and Pury. We might have time to come back to Pury, but I didn't think about him when I did it. And I was very happy that the Friends of the Earth put it on the cover of the magazine, and I was very happy that it was also good for the world. And it's very similar to this. Here I'm excited by the colors, the accidents that happen. By the way, there's a great accident here, because this is all oil barrels, this America made in Africa, and it's called America Made in Africa. And we chose on Zoom all the which barrels should be used. And then, to my happiness, I saw that one of the states of America, it says "Made in Europe," and I can't say that it's anything to do with my wit or anything. This is like a really nice accident, you know.
Simon, I'd like to continue on the topic of craft and its relationship to art. Now, you've been collecting Ron's work for decades. You have been a great champion of the arts, even publicly stating that art is a necessity rather than a luxury. How do you see the role of crafts in art, and how do you, as a collector, or even collectors in general, see the part that you play in ensuring that those crafts endure?
Well, let's say when I saw the first works that by Ron, as you say, decades ago, I fell madly, madly in love with it. And I said, wow, that's completely different from anything I've seen. There was this energy, there was this incredible thing emanating from it. And the incredible thing is that this love has never abated over the years. And in fact, when I was looking now at the film of Dakar and how some of your big classics, your biggest hits in a way, were redone in Dakar, because I'm also obsessed with pop music and all of that. And so I thought, my God, this is like Ron's greatest hits that have been remixed. And sometimes you love the remix as much, if not more, than the original piece. And so it's not really the craftsmanship that drew me to Ron's work. What drew me to it is the inventiveness, is the humor. I think there are very few artists that have a great sense of humor, and I think humor is really one of the prevailing things throughout the oeuvre of Ron. And then it is, of course, the use of totally different materials. I mean, I love to see the AI woodpecker. I mean, that's the best thing I've ever seen of artificial intelligence. My God, it's gorgeous. So I think that you, with all the material that you have worked...
Try to use your voice, so then AI piece that we might show, might not.
Oh, yes, yes. So Ron, I think, has been able to master each material. And when you look at the original Big Easy, he then reached a stage, I mean the initial stage, where these pieces were very knocked about and full of, I don't know how you call it, and then it reached a stage when it was absolute perfection. You sat on these pieces, I mean it was just, the beauty of the line was just total perfection. And then I, as you said, own a few of these pieces, and I was very nervous each time somebody sat on it, and I then went with my handkerchief to polish it again so that it would look as perfect as possible. And then when my children were touching it, I was very worried. And then now to see these same incredible shapes treated in a completely different way, I'm as excited as ever on it, because the beauty of the color and in the fact that you didn't choose fully the colors, that you did as a work in communion, I think it's fabulous. It's the same way that when a new record is being made, and different musicians have a different approach how they will interpret that piece. And but the piece is outstanding, and so the artisans and the have worked with incredible material. Now, of course, craftsmanship is vital, and I basically don't make the difference between fine arts and decorative arts or craftsmanship or thing. I just love art, and when somebody is an outstanding person, whether it's a musician, whether it's a painter, whether it's a designer, or it's a writer or whatever, is just a great artist, un point c'est tout. They just use a different medium to express themselves. And that's why I was always happy when Ron was seen outside of the context of just the world of design. I think that's too limiting, and his work goes way beyond the world of design. Some of the pieces just happen to be functional, and I do live with quite a few of your pieces, even in my tiny apartment in Monaco, and some of these pieces are distinctly uncomfortable and too big, but they look fantastic. They just look, every day when I see them, I get joy out of it. So anyway, to cut a long story short, yes, craftsmanship is very important, and it's great that efforts are being made in many places to keep craftsmanship alive, and it's very important for craftsmen to work together with great artists. And because skill in itself is not enough, because you can be a very skillful artist, or like a musician, you can have the best technique in the world, yet you're not going to be an outstanding musician, or you're not going to be an outstanding artist. And it's that extra dimension, which is very difficult to define, which suddenly lifts it to a different level. And so I feel that's why I have never grown tired with Ron's art, and some of the pieces that excited me way back, or some of these pieces now, excite me as much today than the first day when I saw them.
Amazing. Now, Rolf, you have said that art is about making a connection, a communication, word for word. It's a dialogue between the artist, the work, and the viewer. With that in mind, we can also say that, by extension, a collection or collecting provides an opportunity to create a dialogue between different voices, different times, different cultures, different ideas. So, as a collector, what was your personal reaction upon seeing Ron's work for the first time? And how do you describe the conversations in your living room going between Ron's work, other pieces, including yours, that you've placed together in your home?
First, I think the super interesting thing, the first time I was in contact actually with Ron's work, was in Munich, where in Germany there was not that a big, let's say, design scene. And there was an exhibition in a place called Wunderhaus. And there were shown quite a lot of pieces from British artists, and the most prominent being Ron, but also Tom Dixon, also Danny Lane, quite a number, even Brazer Jones, Dubreuil, who was living in London at the time. And it was an unbelievably vibrant time for design. Every country had this incredible movement. They had Le Nouveau Baroque in France. Yeah, they have some very fantastic people coming from design schools in Germany and Austria. And then there was this center in London. And I remember I saw all these different pieces. And then I came to London, and I actually visited Ron's studio at the time. And what was special about Ron's pieces? It basically merged beautifully the design world, let's say the functional world, with the art world, with the poetic world. And then the one thing which is an interesting thing which has been discussed now is the craftsmanship. So craftsmanship is something very delicate, and it's beautiful, and it's something we all like. But when it becomes too perfect, it loses a little bit its soul. And Ron had this wonderful thing that you made the things in the studio, and there is these coincidences which happen, the imperfections, yeah, which are beautiful. Like you described before, your piece in the back, the resin, you don't know how it cracks. You have to defy the material to have the cracks, because the cracks give it an anima, a soul, a spirit. So when we have often, and we walk down even here, Bond Street or anywhere, you go into a furniture store, and most of what you see, you say, oh, yeah, that doesn't speak to me. So these imperfections which Ron had, especially in his early pieces and now also in the pieces we saw, they just warm my heart.
So Ron's biggest complaint about you is that you were once his biggest collector, but now you've devoted yourself to being a... Ron's even said, this would normally be embarrassing. Wait. Ron even said, you know, this would be embarrassing, but with you, it's exciting. So with that in mind, this to me really talked about complicity between you both. It's a friendship, it's a real complicity. I know that you've, can I call it collaborated? I know you've made a net for Ron's ping pong table, which you did for the Fondation Cartier. Can you both tell us the story about this? Because I definitely want to know.
I can tell you, I went for dinner at this place, and the dinner was on the Cartier table, but this table was also a ping pong table. And then I saw this amazing wooden net with a string and a weight, and wow, this is better than anything I would have done. And I said it to him, and he made one for me. And now, even today we looked at it and we played on his net. And it's unusual that something is accepted like this.
What I may say, I have the privilege of knowing both these gentlemen for a little while, and I know Rolf even for longer than I know Ron, and Rolf was an artist all along. He was, in a very previous life, I did what you're doing now with opera, which was at Sotheby's. I was inviting people that I thought were fascinating artists, and so I did invite Rolf Sachs to speak about his work back then, and we figured out it was 40 years ago, no, or something like that. And I did invite Lord Snowdon, who then was doing, he still does fantastic work. He was a Viscount Linley in those days, and he had just started Lindley Craftsmanship, and your lecture was a huge success. And in those years we had Jeff Koons, we had Karl Lagerfeld, we had Helmut Newton, and we didn't film any of it, we didn't photograph any of it. I see that you are filming us, which I'm very happy that this will go to posterity. What I'm telling you, you have to believe me. But the problem that Rolf had back then, and he still has it up to a degree, but less so now, is that since he does so many different things, you know, he's the king of St. Moritz, he runs and owns the best nightclub in the world, the Dracula, then he is president of the most macho club in the world, which is the Cresta Run, and of course I would never, ever, ever go on a Cresta ride because I'm a coward, and then he is the best host, etc., etc. So he does so many different things that people find it difficult because you assume that somebody, if he's an artist, he is just doing that. So he is an artist through and has been in all of these years. And as I always find, artists are the best collectors, because when you're an artist, you really know and you understand what it means to create an artwork. And that is why he was drawn to the work of Ron. That's why he is collecting. And what is very interesting, I visited Rolf's studio in Rome, and it's fascinating to see all the objects that you have, because it is a creative process in itself to collect. And so I'm very happy that we have three outstanding artists here tonight, and that I had the privilege of knowing for quite some time.
Now, Simon, at a young age, the great art dealer Ernst Byler asked you if your approach to art was intellectual or physical, which then led you to become an art dealer.
Yes. So
Wait. Now, I know you briefly mentioned your first reaction to seeing Ron's work, but do you have the same approach to art as a collector? And was your reaction to seeing Ron's work an intellectual one or a physical one?
So my answer to your question is the same as to the question that Ernst Beile asked me. My approach is purely physical. So, and I think the way I described Ron's work initially, you will have understood that it was a physical, immediate reaction. And then, of course, if I love something, then I want to find out, then I want to get to know the person. And usually when I love the work, I then love the person as well, which has happened with Ron, it had happened with Helmut Newton, with a number of people that have really admired. But I'm not saying that another approach is the wrong approach. I admire people who look at it purely intellectually, because I am so unintellectual that I think it's amazing. So both are legitimate. Now, the reason I saw Beile way back is that I also wanted to become an artist, and I am a failed artist, you see, because my mother was desperate and called Beile and said, listen, I have this hopeless case, can you please talk some sense into this boy? And I was always very ashamed of this past as a failed artist, and then suddenly I discovered gradually that in fact most art dealers, a lot of the people in the auction houses, museum directors, curators, when you dig a little bit, you realize that they were all failed artists. And then it no longer appears in the CV, and it disappears in the CV. You don't write about it, but you know, I lived in Geneva for a while, and I discovered that the print cabinet of Geneva has works by Thomas Krenz, who is a genius director who transformed the Guggenheim Museum and the whole way museums are run in the world. And I can give you a long list of failed artists. And Ernst Beile was one, Jan Crugier was one, Roger Mandel, the director of the Ohio Museum, etc. So that's why it's such a pleasure when you see real artists. And same thing in music. Most people who work for the big music companies, they wanted to be rock stars. They wanted to be on stage. They wanted to break guitars, and they could not succeed. So what's the next best thing? You work for Spotify or for Warner Music or for one of these things, and you become a top music executive.
True. Very true. You also once said, Simon, that dreaming is a prelude to action, whilst talking about your career. But Ron, although I do agree with you, Ron, I would like to know from you as an artist, do you agree with this comment? And I know it's going to bring a lot out of you. And
Sorry,
if so,
what's
how...
the comment?
Dreaming is a prelude to action. Do you agree? And if so, how do you balance
I don't know about dreaming, but being curious about something.
How, exactly what I was about to say. How do you balance your extraordinary imagination, your dreams, the curiosity you constantly talk about? How do you balance that with the functionality of form and your personal artistic expression?
It is about curiosity, like what would happen if? What would happen if, say, we do a ping pong table that is not flat, but it has a belly here? What it does, it slows the game down, and it makes the rallies longer. And the best thing that happened to me with this ping pong table is when this is at the Royal Academy. In the summer show, I put it there, and Anthony Caro, it was his last year, came to see it, and he says to me, "This is a wonderful sculpture." And I said, "Thank you, Sir Anthony." And then he secretly told me, "You should try and play ping pong on it." And I thought, this is it, you know, like the leading, you know, the sculpture of the country looks at it and sees a sculpture first. Then actually something similar happened with you, Simon, here. We did a piece that's based on Matisse. Downstairs. Simon he just walked past the steps and said, "Oh, that piece downstairs, it reminds me of Matisse." I said, "Look, it is one-to-one Matisse." Anyway, but that is, you're curious and you want to see what happens if. And if you're lucky, other people are curious too. I mean, if it's very boring if you're the only curious person about it. This is the Matisse we're talking about, but not we don't
Not
have
in
it.
the old drum, not the
Yeah.
Dakar series. That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, with this, which is exactly one-to-one Matisse snail. And Simon just came from the Tate. He said, that, yeah, they have this at the Tate. But anyway, so yeah, it is about what if we do this? What if we don't do that? My first ever piece of furniture, before I knew I'm going to design furniture, was the rover chair.
Okay, yes, you can show.
Yeah, it's the rover chair. There was a new design magazine called Blueprint, and there was an interview with Rolf, the owner of Vitra, the biggest collector of furniture in the world. And there was a picture of the rover chair, and Ron Arad is the most interesting designer to come from London. Am I a designer? I didn't even know I'm a designer. And it was this piece that, you know, I still have it at home, and when we showed it at the Pompidou Centre in my retrospective, when I wanted to move it 1 meter from here to here, I was shouted at, not without white gloves. and I was the lender.
Now, Ron, you once said, I never really wanted to be a craftsman, but since moving towards...
I changed my mind.
But since moving towards technology, we gained more time, but lost proximity to the toolbox. I'm going to open this up to all of you. This is going to be a debate. It's always been a debate, and I know it's going to be... But do any of you feel skepticism about technology, basically, and technology and craftsmanship and art, and how do you see technology influencing the future of these? Go now. I know you have a lot to say. All three of you. I know you have a lot to say about AI.
Technology is a tool, and craft is a tool. And I do so much because I'm lazy. I jump from one thing to the other, and I'm not... I have a lot of admiration to glass blowers. And yes, when I go to Murano to do a piece of glass, I said to them, "Can I try a bit?" But I never wanted to be like a glass blower, although I admire glass blowers. The reason I started with metal is because I thought metal, sheet steel, is more forgiving material than wood. With wood, you have to be a craftsman.
Technology, we have to embrace technology. Obviously, it is something fantastic. There are new ways to do things and so on. Very often it gets used to do things which, I don't know, which don't really connect with us, yeah, which feel a little dead. So basically one has to embrace it, but we need a lot of good designers, also of artists, people with taste, with style, yeah, who understand something, to use that technology to make something cool out of it, because it's amazing all the things you can do. But they all need someone who puts it in a sort of, in a beautiful way. If it's now art or, a fashion or style, it's super important. And of course we have fantastic craftsmen, and a lot of craftsmanship has come back because there's also the economic means that people buy the craft. But crafts on the other side gets more and more expensive because the wages locally of all these craftsmen are much higher than they used to be. Yeah, obviously we had many, many more fantastic woodworkers in 1900 because the wages for a woodworker was still very low. So you could do the most unbelievable ceilings in some beautiful castles. Today, to do something like this costs a fortune just because the wages are so high. But the possibilities are still grand. And what is quite nice, I think, that a lot of crafts which were lost over the years came back because there's basically a market for it. Everybody accepts it. Simon?
Yes, no, what I find fascinating is we've seen how Ron has used technology fully and experimented with all of it and all the new possibilities that are given to an artist that nowadays has a much wider choice tools and a way of expressing him or herself. And like Rolf said, it's so interesting to see how artists use and deal with technology. So another wonderful example besides Ron is David Hockney, because I remember when Polaroid cameras came out, well, the first artist who experimented with it and all that was David Hockney, and he completely revolutionized photography by his assemblage of Polaroids. And then the fax machine came. Again, David Hockney was the first to do all these fax drawings. Now, what he didn't know was, luckily, the Polaroids are still here today, but fax papers, it all disappears. So if you owned fax by David Hockney, it's tough luck because nothing is left of it. Then the iPads and the iPhones came, all that. And I will never forget the exhibition at the Royal Academy, where you had the paintings hanging next to the drawings, next to the photographs, next to the videos, and next to the iPad drawings, done in super large, and it worked beautifully, side by side.
Super.
Last question, because I think we're getting towards the time, but a question for the three of you, because the one thing, and I've heard all three of you speak, the one word you keep on mentioning, all three of you, is curiosity, and I've heard all of you mention it when talking about art. You're all three involved and energized by other art forms. I know you're a DJ, artists, and so on. So how important is it to be curious as an artist, as a collector, as somebody in the arts?
If I go to a show, to a gallery show, and I'm not jealous of anything, it's not a good show. It's like, what am I doing here?
It's a very good comment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if I have an idea, I imagine, if I saw it in a gallery, would I be jealous? No, not doing it. Yes, let's do it. So that is, yeah, of course. And everyone is trapped by the time they grew up, the culture. I'm a 60s child, so the music I listen to, and the art, and the thing, and it's all to do with when I grew up, what I taught myself to like. And as a teenager, you think you're the center of the world, which we were.
Curiosity is hugely important, and we all have to stay the child in us. Yeah, and as a child you are curious. And keep that, not as long as possible, forever. Yeah, be curious. What is there? Be curious about people, about souls, about objects. I go into a house and I want to see the whole bloody house, from the cellar to the thing. My wife was always embarrassed, yeah, to go somewhere with me because I wanted to see every little corner. And it's super important. Yeah, and that, of course, drives also creativity. Yeah, because if you lose your curiosity, then you have to be interested in,
I could not agree more. That we have to stay curious, and it's not just artists. I think we all need to stay curious, because what is interesting with what Ron said, that a child of 60s, I'm a child of 60s, just as much. And I find that very often we relate through our life to what excited us when we were teenagers. And so the rest is kind of being able to realize all our dreams that we developed while we were teenagers. And that has a huge influence on the taste that we have. And so I always find that collectors who collect contemporary art are fantastic about buying art of their same generation. Usually they're quite good or pretty good for the art of the next generation. And then there have been a number of collectors who are no longer getting it for the generation afterwards. And so they chose the right artists at the beginning of their generation and so on. So, and there are exceptions. I always mention the same example. There was this Burmese art history professor who, as a young man, had used his pocket money to buy a watercolor by Paul Klee. And then in the early 70s, Joseph Beuys was this sensation, and the establishment in the art world were deeply shocked. And there comes this 90-year-old gentleman to me and says, listen, I want to buy Joseph Beuys, and so because of that I need to sell my Paul Clays, and can you help me selling my Paul Clays? And I thought, this is fantastic. This man has kept his pulse, his finger on the pulse, and it's because he was curious. It was curiosity which allowed him to always be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, why don't you all sell your Paul Clays and buy our stuff?
So it's an engine. You know, the question is, what is your engine? What makes you tick? I always find it fascinating with each person is what makes you tick. Is it money? Is it glory? Is it comfort? Is it love? And curiosity is a good engine to have.
Rolf, Simon, thank you for being such an important part of this panel. It's been fascinating talking to you. It was definitely as entertaining as I knew it would be. I'd like to open up if there's any questions from any of you.
Which advice would you give to your younger self?
Say it again.
Which advice would you give to your younger self?
Is this for...
Don't listen. My advice is don't listen to an advice.
That's a good advice. Rolf?
What was the question? What advice would you give to the younger son?
To your younger self. Younger self.
To my younger self. Oh God! I mean, I have so much advice. Yeah, I mean it's crazy. Yeah. First, I should have, followed from the first days my passion for the arts or design and for creativity. Yeah, and should have, just be much more focused on that. Yeah, one is so distracted in life. One has so many other things which confronted me in life, things which are also nearly self-imposed on me. And so I would have a lot of advice for my younger self.
I don't know, I would just say, just do it.
That's a good one.
I was going to say, just don't do it.
Any other questions?
Follow your passion. I think that is an important thing.
For Ron, the technology question. All your notes, are your notes done with a digital pen or are they done with a normal pen? When I saw on the screen that looked like digital writing, when you make notes, do you use a electronic pen or use a pencil?
Recently I use more a light pen on a screen, but what I would take to a desert island with me, a 6B pencil. So that is, I mean, a steel pencil is my main tool.
Well, thank you all very much for coming tonight. It was our great pleasure and honor. Thank you.